Hey, it's Josh again, and this is another episode of what I am calling TikTok Rants. I did not expect to be doing another one of these, but I kept on ranting, and so it has gone from being just posts on TikTok to another podcast episode. The post to podcast people are those who are listening to this right now. I don't know if TikTok will be around after January 19th when supposedly a ban is taking effect. So maybe this will continue in some other form. Maybe I will be on some street corner and you can walk by with your headphones on and turn down whatever it is you're listening to and pretend you're listening to the Josh Bloom podcast when in fact I am just standing there next to you. I don't mind. The first thing that I will be talking about is called You Can't Legislate Morality. Have a listen, and I will be back afterwards. You cannot legislate morality is something that a man I respect quite a bit, who's no longer with us, who I cried the day that he died. I didn't cry for my father when he died. I cried for this guy, and I can't say his name because this guy did not like publicity, but he was somewhat of a public figure. But he told me you cannot legislate morality. And that was 10 years ago. Now, I don't even know if he coined this phrase. I don't think he did. But goddamn, it is so true. And I was thinking about it this morning in terms of where we're at now, in terms of our political discourse, and how, for instance, in Germany and other countries around the world, they have tried to varying degrees of success to pass laws about Holocaust denial. And I certainly am very happy for any sort of suppression of the ideas of behind denying one of the most horrific human tragedies in the past 100 years. And as a Jewish and gay person who would have most certainly been rounded up, I have no problem with those kinds of laws. But as a person who understands through my own personal experience in life that suppressing other people's will to be immoral and to behave immorally is a fool's errand when it comes to trying to do that by enacting laws. This is my belief that when you put rules in place, people want to break those rules. They do not see those rules as beneficial. I'm saying certain people. Some people see certain rules as being helpful guidance as far as maintaining the social contract. Like, bus your table. Like, don't ride your bike on the track where people are walking. These are just two examples of things that I run into on a daily basis that people just willy-nilly break because they just don't give a fuck. They just want to do whatever they want to do. There are some people, when it comes to doing whatever they want to do, they will run stop signs, or they will be deniers because their worldview led them to the denying, which is their right. Everyone has their right to think what they want to think, I guess, until, until the Tesla guy implants whatever he's going to implant in your head to control your thoughts. But for the moment, we are still able to think the way we want to think. Our thoughts are private. So if you want to have those private thoughts and be a denier, then hey, that's up to you. If you want to decorate the inside of your house with all sorts of mustache man propaganda, well, that is your right now, isn't it? It is when that behavior leaks out into the public and disturbs the peace as such that it is at this point,
that is a problem when laws and rules are put into place to try to keep those people from displaying those behaviors. It is my belief that those kinds of people choose to display those behaviors with even more tenacity. I love that word. Even more tenacity. They feel not only emboldened by the idea, but now they feel emboldened by someone else's pressure on them to keep their idea private. So what do? Well, the first answer to that is nothing, because there's nothing to do. Dealing with a bad actor, dealing with a maniac, dealing with anyone who is already in the position that they're being put upon and oppressed, you're not going to be able to talk to them. But some people, I've got to believe some people are just misinformed people. Some people just haven't had the opportunity to interact with people who are not like them. I was talking to someone the other day where they basically were saying my optimism that people are good, not all people, but that inherently people are good, is foolish in some way. And I mentioned Anne Frank and that how she said that I still believe at heart people are good, to paraphrase. And he countered with, why do people always bring up that phrase? And I said, okay, forget it. Forget that I say it. I think that people are good. Forget Anne Frank, okay? Because he was another Jewish person. So I was bringing up Anne Frank, hoping we'd see some common ground on that. No, we did not. I believe people are good. I do. And obviously, this is not about politics. Some people are awful. Some people are just truly garbage. Some people are above and beyond in terms of their altruism. They live to be good, to help others, to contribute positively to the world. And then there are a lot of people who are misguided. They're traumatized. They've experienced life in a way that has hardened them to any possibility of them being good. And some of those people are people who would fall into the category of being like deniers, for example, for whatever reason, however they got there. Maybe they're finally found a group of friends who are also deniers. They have a friend group where they knit, and they knit that symbol, like Greg from from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I feel like if those people with those ideologies or those thoughts or those impulses that lead them to these behaviors had the chance to interact even with someone like me, who I can be very obnoxious, but I admit it. I admit to being a jerk. I have had comment sections arguments with people where we ended up being friendly because, in fact, just the other day, someone was leaving nasty comments, and I went to their page, and it turns out that they design and install subwoofers for cars. And we ended up with a nice friendly interaction because I was like, those are cool looking subs, and they were. When you can meet people where they live, I do think now, again, this is when we're talking about deniers, it's like, I'm friendly with that denier now. We're friends. Probably not. But the chance of maybe interacting with someone who does have a point of view that falls into a very dark bucket, I think interacting with them in a way that treats them as human for a moment can yield some results. Maybe they leave the conversation thinking the exact same way they did when they came into it, but maybe a few days later, a few months later, a few years later, whatever, somehow it comes back to them. Somehow it resonates with them and changes them. And we do change people one person at a time. We can only interact with one person at a time in terms of, intimacy, in terms of real, eye-to-eye contact. So that's all you can do is interact with one person at a time. And I believe that if I do that, I'm going to leave the interaction enriched no matter what. And if that person does too, well, god damn, that's a win, because I didn't have to legislate morality. I just had to communicate morality.
How was that? Did you enjoy that? That is the sound of me ranting and raving in a Panera while all around me people sneeze and cough and get their particulate matter on my food and in my coffee. And if you are disgusted by my description of that, please remember that I actually had to sit in the middle of it and experience it. Now, maybe those people around me were like, look at this dude talking into a microphone while he's sitting in that booth. What a weirdo. Maybe they think I'm the weird one. That could very well be. This next piece is called Rainbow for Pay, or Pay for Rainbow. And the reason it says rainbow on the description in the video is because this friggin' TikTok makes issues about saying the word gay. So it is actually gay for pay or pay for gay. I don't go on too long here because I don't have to. I'll get right to the point. Unlike this introduction. This introduction is probably longer than the actual piece you're about to listen to. So get into it, and then I will come back right after it.
GAY for pay. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to be censored. GAY for pay. You may have heard that phrase. I am listening to what I have now been telling people is the best podcast ever made, a history of rock music in 500 songs. And it is the episode about the Velvet Underground. And it is a very long episode, running almost 4 hours long. And they are in the period of when Andy Warhol is first discovering the Velvet Underground for himself and talking about Andy Warhol's films and whether or not he exploited some of the people in his films because they were often queer people who were subject to the laws of the time being the early to mid 60s, when being GAY was against the law, basically. And I started to think, as a GAY, as a gay person, as this new administration comes in, I was like, oh, it could be illegal again. And then I thought to myself, well, but there are some of these billionaires, like, for instance, Peter Thiel, who funded the political career of the incoming vice president, who is gay and out and has been for a very long time. And I thought to myself, well, he's not going to, go back into the closet or something. So then if there were such laws again, he would probably find a way to not be subject to those laws. And then I remembered that recently the incoming president has recently he had posted on his social media that he was offering an opportunity for anyone, any government, I don't know, it could be just anybody off the street, I guess. although these types of people aren't really coming off the street. Any billionaire who paid $1 billion to the U.S. government would get around legislation or get around what's the word? They wouldn't have to be subject to the same kind of regulations, the same kind of regulations that anyone else is subject to. And isn't that fascinating? So I thought to myself, oh, well, I guess you could be pay for gay. You could be, or pay for GAY. It's too late now. Where you can, if you pay $1 billion, then you're allowed to be gay. And that would work then for Peter Thiel, although he probably wouldn't have to pay the $1 billion. Like, Donald Trump would give him like a break on that. You don't have to be, you don't have to pay to be gay, but other people would have to pay to be gay. I think that's what I'm saying here. That's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is you do not have to be gay for pay. You can pay to be gay in the administration that is coming up. So, but
I also want to mention a history of rock music in 500 songs. This guy, his voice is bonkers amazing. And as he says at the end of every episode, the uh, best way to get the word out about a podcast is word of mouth. So I'm word of mouthing it, and I'm also word of mouthing my podcast, which is in its infancy, but I would adore it if you went and listened to it. You can go to tinyurl.com/joshbloompod. I made this incredibly easy to listen to or enter address. The thing is, if you are listening to this via the podcast right now, well, that is some kind of meta, bizarre weirdness. And what's extra meta is the fact that Mark Zuckerberg of Meta is a billionaire who now, if he wanted to leave his wife to be gay, he has a means to pay. Isn't that nice? How did you enjoy that? Good? Excellent. I realize now that if you did actually answer and I did pretend to listen, that would be incredibly weird, but also kind of cool. And I'm glad we have that sort of relationship. I am recognizing that I am particularly hyped up as I record this at 3:30 in the morning because yesterday I bought a donut from Dunkin' Donuts, a cookie crumble specialty donut, and I did not eat it yesterday. I actually put it in a Tupperware to eat today, and not thinking that it might hype me up too much with sugar right before I record this intro. Well, here we are. So while I am so over the top right now, let me introduce this third little bit. I had talked a moment ago about people coughing and sneezing, and now I realize that I talked about this at the Panera at the time. So I will let you in and let you hear that. This piece is called Not Wet Leg, Wet Cough.
You have heard of the band Wet Leg, no doubt. I'm not talking about Wet Leg. Hopefully Wet Leg will come out with a new record soon because their music is joyous and fun, but I'm not talking about something else. And this thing I'm talking about is called Wet Cough. And Wet Cough comes out whenever anyone wants it to come out, apparently. I am writing something about how people behave in public. And in this case, I am referencing the behavior that people display in 3 different types of coffee shops. Now, I will post about this when I finish writing this, but I thought it might be good to come on here and just talk about an experience that I'm adding to this piece of writing that just happened the other day. It is one of the most disturbing and disgusting experiences that I have ever had. As I sat in a local eatery, and it is a chain, I won't name it by name, but you can understand that game, and I'm sure you have experienced the same. This little booth I was sitting at, doing my work, a gentleman and his lady companion sat at the booth behind me. So, if you can understand, I'm sitting there, and my back is to 2 people that are behind me, with the gentleman in question facing my back. So, if you can imagine, we're talking about wet cough. Every time someone might cough, they would spray particulate matter over my shoulder into my breathing space. So now look, we're post pandemic here. There was a time during the pandemic where people were, even if, whatever was going on with what they believed, didn't believe, masks, vaccines, whatever. I think people at least felt like, hey, I'm gonna not just cough on people and cough in people's faces. It was kind of an understanding that maybe coughing in people's faces, you know why they probably thought that? It's because when you grew up, you knew not to cough in people's faces. I mean, I thought all throughout the pandemic, like a 4-year-old knows that when you cough on people, you give them your germs, you spread your germs on them. I, excuse me, I would go to I would go to Flushing, Queens, pretty regularly many years ago now, and that is a heavily Asian community. And I used to notice that many of the people in that community would wear masks. And I was like, I wonder why that is. Maybe that's because they know that when you wear a mask, when you have stuff coming out of you, it doesn't get on to other people. Now, isn't that nice of them to do that? So as we grew up, we knew not to get our stuff on people unless they wanted it. But that's a different video. Oops. In this case, this gentleman behind me, he coughed in public. That's okay, but man, it didn't end there. It only began there, the coughing. I feel like I need to issue a trigger warning. If you are triggered by people and the discussion of people spraying stuff out of their mouth onto the world, you might want to tune out. You might want to read the transcript. This gentleman began to wet cough. His girlfriend, wife, whatever she was, just kept up her conversation as if nothing was going on. The wet coughing was visceral. It was heavy, coming from a place that I didn't know a person could generate that kind of coughing from. But it was deep. I would say this guy might want to go, get with a voice teacher or something, because maybe he has a future in being a baritone, because it was coming from a place that was loud, abrasive, and quite full of, I guess the only word is mucus, is really the only word I could think of. So I did a bunch of turning around. I tried to do some stares. I tried to, under my breath and then over my breath, say, "Hey, that sounds like you got a cold. Sounds like you're sick." To the point where, if I took it any further, and I got to look at this guy. Like, he was a big enough dude that he probably is used to living a life where he'll just do whatever the hell he wants because he doesn't think anyone's going to challenge him. But the thing is, like, I can summon rage, and big dudes who are used to not having to deal with confrontation, they're not prepared to deal with rage. Rage is very, very powerful. So, I took it as far as I thought that I could take it before it might then develop into some kind of confrontation, altercation. One thing I did was I kind of looked around for an ally. I looked around like, is anyone else noticing this? That's something I'll do. I was like, maybe it's just me. I looked around to see if there was an ally in this eatery, and there was. There was another guy just shaking his head like in disbelief that someone would behave this way in public. And I felt a solidarity with him, and I was waiting it out. The gentleman, the coughing man. That's a pretty generic name, but if I could think of something better, I'll throw it out there. But coughing man then started talking to an employee at this eatery. It's a very nice woman, and talking to her, that made me realize they know each other. So that sort of downgraded my feeling about escalating this, because I was like, wow, it didn't make me feel like I was in the wrong or anything. It just made me feel like, there's another layer of consequence that could come from this that I am not interested in. So the coughing continued, and eventually he got up and left, and the guy just looked like a stone cold mess. And I'm in a phase of my life where I lean towards optimism and I lean towards empathy. And I try to intellectually piece together how someone got to the place they got to where they feel comfortable just coughing in public like that, wet, spreader type coughing. And frankly, for the next couple of days, I felt a little ill, and I'm like, that motherfucker got me sick. and really, like anyone's like, nah, you know, if you wanted to try to be like, nah, I didn't get you sick. I'm telling you, I thought I was married to this guy after that. I went home with this guy's history on my person. So basically, what I'm saying is the behavior of people in public is astounding. And I am summing this up within the context of coffee culture and how in coffee shops people behave in a way that is a microcosm of how they behave generally in public and how you can spot these people and acknowledge their existence and protect yourselves from them. Not only protect yourselves physically, like getting out of the way of their mucus, but protect yourself psychologically and emotionally. And I will let you know when I post that. But for now, try to stay out of the way of spit.